What's up, guys? I'm Kate with Tech Match, and I'm very excited today to be with Teo from INF Jinxed. She has a YouTube channel and an Instagram page, and I've been following your Instagram page for a while, and I really like it. So that's why I decided that I wanted to reach out and do a collab with you, because you do a lot of these really awesome and helpful little infographics on the cognitive functions, and I like that you are explaining them in a concise and simple way for people, because there's a lot of people who want to get into it, but you know, understanding cognitive functions can be like a big barrier to entry. So I love your work there, and I wanted to talk to you. I've seen a lot recently where you're posting about the cognitive functions like TE Hero, and in the description you'll say that it can feel like the opposite, the reverse function TI, is opposing it even when it's not. So I wanted to dig into that with you a little bit. Where does this come from? Socionics? How does it look when these functions are opposing each other? Why do they feel that way? Does that happen everywhere in the stack where they feel like the opposite function is opposing it? And I've seen this theory. Sorry, I'm talking a lot at the beginning. I've seen this theory on other channels and other sources, but it is in opposition with one of the popular theories saying that like opposite functions feed each other and source each other, and they are more compatible. So that's why I wanted to talk to you today about an opposing theory and get some different viewpoints.
Yeah, great to see everyone. I'm really happy to be doing this collab with Kate today. We've been talking about exploring some topics together for a while, so it's really awesome to be here today. And yeah, the thing that you pointed out earlier is something I also think is quite interesting. And I was kind of meditating with respect to why does it feel like the fifth function in our stack is something that is triggering us in a way that, you know, it's kind of opposing. Okay. And the thing that I came up with is that in a way or another, it feels like a competition, you know, kind of like when people are experiencing similar things and they have a similar set of core values or characteristics, they're more likely to feel like they're competing with each other. Because when someone is very different from you, you'll be like, oh, well, look, this person can actually have something great to offer, so I'm more likely to appreciate the differences. But when someone is more similar to you, but still not exactly the same, you'll be more likely to feel like the person is like triggering and opposing you in a way or another. So this is why Ni and Ne as hero versus nemesis function can like interact with each other in such a way that they seem like they're competing. So for example, an INFJ and an INTJ can feel like an ENTP and an ENFP are challenging them, but to the extent that they're being bullied or their intuition is not functioning well enough. And they're like, what is going on? I felt like my intuition was good and it was functioning in a way that was helping me. But now suddenly there's this other kind of intuition that I seem to not be able to grasp. And what is it about? Is it that my intuition is wrong? Should I doubt myself? Or is it more to the picture? Is it just something that I can use to kind of complete my vision? And I've seen this happen with other cognitive functions too, like TI hero and TE heroes. having the same kind of effect on each other, FI and FE, SI and SE. And that's not to say that they're not compatible or that they cannot work together. Of course they can. It's just, you know, this feeling of being threatened. And like a lot of people are not comfortable admitting it, as far as I'm like seeing around me.
Definitely. I'm trying to think about what each of those would look like in reality. So I'll start with my experience. So I'm SE hero. And when I am around SI hero, that makes me feel like I'm incompetent, because they make me feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And usually, like, this is like the case at work, where I have these types of interactions, or not my current job because I'm the boss, but in past jobs where I felt like that, because I often wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, but, you know, just like bending the rules a little bit, doing things how I wanted to do them, what worked for me, but wasn't exactly by the book. And they made me feel like I wasn't a good employee. So maybe that conflict arises more when it's like that type of relationship where you could even be in competition with each other, rather than in like a love relationship, where those two would be more compatible and working together. What do you think?
I guess that kind of makes sense. I feel like this kind of competition and triggering of each other can actually like function across a wide array of situations. When it comes to romantic relationships, because of the heightened like level of intimacy and stuff, I feel like you're gonna be more likely to get past it and get deeper into your stack. And then the deeper you go into the stack, the more different it will be that you connect with each other and exchange deeper experiences. But when it comes to work, and specifically to sensing functions, I've noticed that SE heroes and SI heroes can actually be highly compatible, helping each other make the reality even better and engaging with the reality like in a better way. But like ESTPs and ESFPs, I find, can be triggered by ISFJs and ISTJs who kind of resist change. Like I'm also triggered by that sometimes, but in a different way. I feel like for me, the tendency to be very focused on routine and tradition and doing things the way I've been used to be doing can be a bit sad. I find it more sad rather than annoying. But I've seen that I've worked with a few ESTPs and ESFPs before, and I've noticed that their desire to like live and make things happen and change things and improvise and adapt was kind of receiving this shocking perspective from the ISFJs and ISTJs that they were working with. And they felt like these people were trying to slow them down from making things happen. And that's where the trigger appeared. On the other hand, the ISFJs and ISTJs were fascinated that SE heroes were so in the moment, taking control, being in the middle of things. But they were also triggered by the fact that there was this deeper voice in themselves saying, maybe you should also be doing that. And maybe the fact that you're so good with like tradition and implementing experiences from your past into the present and future is not enough. So the fact that SE heroes do it in a different way can cause a similar kind of, you know, either resistance or a feeling that I'm not good enough. And this just came to mind now. Sorry for interrupting. Maybe it's the introverted functions that are more likely to doubt themselves more. Because I see it with NI hero, SI hero, TI hero, and FI hero.
Well, they have an introverted critic function.
Exactly.
So extroverts, their criticism is an extroverted function.
Other people.
Others.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And also they have an extroverted inferior function. So the fear is...
Insecurity comes from that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I want to look at what would the other ones look like. FI hero as opposing FE hero and vice versa. So what do you think?
Yeah, with respect to the feeling function, I find that they can often get along very well, probably the best. Sometimes NI and NE too, but I feel like FI and FE would be even better because of the fact that they're more flexible, more empathetic, more in tune with the other person's feelings. But in this scenario, FE, I would find, is triggered by FI's tendency to either withdraw or focus too much on their own needs and their own feelings. And to an FE hero, that can seem rather selfish. And they're like, how can you stop caring about other people? How can you stop projecting everything onto other people just for your own benefit? Whereas if we reverse it, FI hero will be like, well, why are you being so phony? Why are you being so obsessed with what other people think? Maybe you should align yourself with your own values, with the things that really matter to you. And this is where the clash occurs. I've actually seen a few very funny interactions between ESFJs and INFPs. So they would normally get along well, and then suddenly this kind of conflict arises. Mm-hmm. The ESFJ gets annoyed at the INFP's tendency to withdraw and take care of themselves, whereas like FI, INFP kind of perspective focuses on ESFJ's tendency to resist that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And something that I want to highlight for people is that like there will be conflicts in every single matchup of a relationship. There's no like absolutely perfect one where everything is synchronous and you won't have any arguments and the other person will never annoy you. Like they're human beings, okay? You're not always going to agree. And yeah, everybody's annoying. So, but yeah, this is really interesting. When it comes to FI and FE, I have seen that opposition, but I've also seen the FE often like absorbs the values of the FI user and takes it on as their own. Like, oh, you really like this? Like now I like this. And if you've ever watched the show Parks and Rec, maybe.
I've heard about it, but I haven't watched it now.
Yeah, I don't know if it's popular where you are, but for those who have watched it, Anne is a high FE user, and she kind of like has this problem of losing herself in her relationships because she takes on the values of whoever she's dating and becomes more like that person. And I'm not sure the FI users appreciate that from the FE user. I think they might find that annoying.
Yeah, I've seen both INFPs and ISFPs react rather aggressively to that, and they tend to be quite unhappy when either ESFJs and ENFJs are completely absorbing everything that comes from other people, because to them it's kind of like you're basically cutting off their entire basis for an identity. It's like, oh, I don't know what's happening here, you know? And it's kind of like they've built their identity on a foundation of being aligned with who you are. But then, of course, someone else can come from the outside of any different type, and they can ask, well, what is really authenticity? What does it really mean to be authentic? I've been asking myself that question, and I feel like it's kind of difficult to give an answer. Like, sure, maybe it's just about how they perceive things. Like INFPs will perceive things to be in a specific way, and that will align with their perceived authenticity. But if we are to look at it from a different perspective, I feel like it's quite difficult to define what that really means.
It is, yeah. I really think that any type can be just as authentic as any other type. I don't think FI users own authentic. I think they just think about it and speak about it more.
Yeah, but even that, when you're, for example, doing something that is perceived to be inauthentic, so you are doing a behavior that is not aligned with your values or things that you care about in life, you might be doing it because you have a need and you need to fulfill that need in a way or another. Maybe you're insecure, maybe you're going through a time in your life that is really difficult and challenging. So you will do something that is perceived to be inauthentic, but after all, maybe it's authentic to you in that specific context, because life is so complicated, you know. You can't just narrow it down like that.
I'm authentically inauthentic maybe at times. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's also a way of looking at it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good point. I really like that. Cool. Do you mind if we go through each pair?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so let's do TI and TE as opposed to each other.
I find this dynamic to be very interesting and kind of fascinating to watch from the outside, because they'll have fierce debates and conversations, challenging each other's perspectives. Here, what I've noticed is that TI hero type will feel like resisting a TE hero type's perceived control. So they're going to be like, I'm going to focus on my logic, on the way I've created this mental model of how something works. And I appreciate a different perspective. I want it to be challenged because I want to improve it. But how dare you come and try to tell me what to do? How dare you come to control me? And they can perceive that kind of behavior that is kind of opposing their whole independent mental model. I know that to an extent ENTPs and ESTPs can relate, but I find that INTPs and ISTPs are even more focused on that than anyone else. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, we've got ENTJs and ESTJs, who might find that INTPs and ISTPs are being a little bit too inefficient with their logic. And they're like, I can see that you're thinking very deeply and analyzing things in a very, very deep way, but maybe that's kind of stupid, and maybe you should focus on what actually works in this specific situation and what we can implement that would help like a larger group of people. So that deep analysis might not be useful. It might not be helpful enough in this kind of scenario. And then they will get triggered by how much time an INTP or an ISTP will spend analyzing things into a lot of depth, perceiving it as procrastination sometimes. I've seen that dynamic when TE heroes are managers in a company, and they perceive INTPs and ISTPs to be wasting time sometimes, even if they're not. So that's where that, you know, competition arises or conflict arises, even when the other party might not feel like it is actually a conflict or an opposition.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't seen that one in real life. I'm trying to imagine it.
Okay.
But we don't need to stop. We can keep going. You know, I did a collab with Benjamin, and he talked about something very similar as far as the annoyance that can occur between the opposing functions. But where I've seen it also is not just the hero functions, but I see it when the parent function of one is the trickster function of the other. Because the trickster is the most unaware and the parent is the point from which you argue. So if you are arguing from a particular perspective and the other person doesn't understand at all, it just then it's going to be a nasty argument. I think there's a lot of points at which we can oppose each other. But anyway, moving on to, let's do NI and NE.
Here I would feel like, again, the kind of conversations that arise as a result of NI hero interacting with NE hero can be spectacular. Like, I've had some of the best moments discussing with NE heroes, especially ENTPs, but also ENFPs. But because NE is always trying to break things apart and NI wants to narrow it down, NI will feel like NE is trying to make a mess everywhere. And it's going to react like, why are you trying to ruin the conclusion that I came to? I'm very proud of this conclusion. I've analyzed things to such depth and I've narrowed it down to such a beautiful concept. And now you're trying to like pull it apart and make it a complete mess. What are you doing here? And this can be the outward behavior of an INFJ or an INTJ. But if you look deeper into what they're actually thinking, they might be actually doubting the conclusion that they reached because they're accessing their NE nemesis function. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the spectrum, NE heroes will be quite curious to interact with NI heroes. I've seen them being drawn to NI heroes. Like, it happens to me all the time. And it's a really cool dynamic. But I feel like the NE heroes will be a little bit insecure around NI heroes because they feel like they cannot focus on what really matters. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes their perspective is a little bit scattered because they're seeing everything and connecting the dots all the time. So when they see NI's ability to narrow things down, they'll be like, whoops, I cannot do that. It's kind of difficult for me to focus on that one single coherent conclusion, on that red thread. So I might feel like this person is either better than me, I've seen it happen, or I can feel like this person is trying to limit my perspective and to make it a little bit less than it can actually be, kind of limiting the potential of my ideas. Yeah. That's how I see this happening.
Yeah. I've seen that. I have that problem in my business, and I'm not even an NI hero, but like, okay. Yeah, it's like, I've made this thing. Why do you want to mess with it? Just so it's funny that I ever thought I was an NI hero. But anyway, this brought up an interesting point, and now I forgot it. So I think what you've talked about here has been like super valuable. I think it also highlights how important it is to have these opposing functions around us to challenge our viewpoints, because if you surround yourself with people who have the same functions as you, it'll be nice and comfortable, and you can still grow, but you might get stuck in kind of an echo chamber of your own perspectives. So especially like, in friendships and relationships, like in business relationships, you need to have these others around you that may drive you crazy, but it's necessary for you. Mm-hmm. The NI user needs the NE user to blow it up sometimes. Mm-hmm.
I feel like the kind of opposition that is created between the hero and the nemesis function is very helpful, and it can indeed integrate your perspective. The more difficult part comes when you're interacting with people with your trickster or demon functions. That's where things can get kind of slippery, and you get deeper into the parts of you that you have no idea what they're doing. I mean, you might know rationally because you've learned about cognitive functions, but when it comes to actually dealing with it, I find sometimes it's quite difficult. So that's an even more complicated topic. But if we're just to focus on the first and fifth function, I find that their opposition is quite interesting and very helpful for integrating a broader perspective of things, or of doing things, if we're talking more about decider functions.
Yeah. I think that MBTI understanding is a fantastic empathy tool. And that's really how it should be used in its purest form, to understand how other people perceive the world and then form judgments based on those perceptions. Because we all have all the functions. We have all of these abilities and perceptions within us. It's just how we prioritize them, because we can't do them all at once. But understanding that in order to, meet people where they are instead of alienating them is really what I would like to see more from this community. But
yeah, I was going to add a little bit to that. And I would say that it's very important not to get caught up in drawing a very clear line between these cognitive functions, because after all, they are simply metaphors for how the mind works. Mm-hmm. It's basically humans trying to understand themselves as a species through a set of metaphors that we call cognitive functions, but they do not exist per se. They are just a way of kind of pulling information from our conscious, subconscious, and unconscious in such a way that we can kind of make sense of that mess. But there is so much more to it, because even your personality type is a very small part of the whole personality spectrum, And that in itself is a such small part compared to the whole that you are as a human. So that's also quite important to acknowledge.
Yeah, I really like that. I like how you describe it as a system of metaphors. That's really good. How long have you been at this as far as your page and your YouTube channel? I don't think it's been very long, right?
No, I've only started my online presence like a few months ago in
Oh,
April this year. But I've been into this topic for almost 10 years now. It's been basically the obsession of my life so far. And I've kind of worked with it in real life a little bit, and mainly use this as a hobby and a way of interacting with people and understanding myself. But because I've had so much encouragement in real life to start a channel and actually make it, you know, broader and expanding and getting to know more people as well from other countries and stuff, it's really been a nice step forward, because I had been thinking about it for a while, and now it's happening, and I'm really happy for that.
yeah, you're growing very fast for,
Yeah.
for your channels being so new. So I'm glad I found you.
Yeah, really glad. I had been following you for a while actually before I started my channel. So
Why'd you
I'm
decide to do it?
follow you.
No, I wouldn't ask you that.
ESTP
Why you
being
like
very direct.
no, no. Why'd you decide to get into making, getting out there with MBTI instead of just studying it for yourself? Why'd you decide to make a channel and all this content?
I feel like there's multiple reasons. Firstly, I've been working with it in like coaching sessions and trainings for the past 2-3 years, and I've found that it brings great value to people. So doing it online means that I can reach more people, and therefore maybe I can bring more value to a larger group of people. And secondly, I had more time because of quarantine. So I actually got to the basics of what doing or creating a YouTube channel would mean, because before that I really had no idea what I was doing. So I thought I couldn't deal with the technicalities, and I wouldn't have the patience to like take care of all of the practical details, because that's something I usually struggle with. I'm like, here is the concept, someone else do the implementation for me. But because I had more time to study that, I actually kind of understood what is happening, and then I just decided to try it out, and it's been a great experience so far.
Yeah.
Really, really
What's your YouTube channel called?
INF Jinxed.
Oh, sorry.
So
INF Jinxed. Okay, I will link it in the description below. And your Instagram handle is the same, right?
yes, it's exactly the same.
Okay, so I'll link those in the description. But
Perfect.
that's all we'll do for today. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed this so much. It was a great collab.
I loved it too, and thank you very much for having me on your channel.
Thanks. See ya.
Yeah.